Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at?
Put on that rooftop. Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in the inside city!
We're east of the riverbed. And, we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Jeff Kenney, back for part 2. How are you, my friend?
Good, Mike. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, I got to thank you again for all of the wisdom that you dropped in part 1. And for the audience who hasn't watched or listened to Jeff Kenney part 1, it's on the various platforms, YouTube channel and all that. So go back, because Jeff dropped a lot of good wisdom and insights during that. And we're just going to pick up where we left off, Jeff. So the next topic on the agenda is that very controversial word of discipline. And what I mean by that is, we were both, you joined the Marine Corps in 75, I joined in 74, and so we were snuffies, we were PFCs, and we were forced to do a lot of stuff, haircuts, and back then spick shine boots and starch statines, and we thought it was just bullshit, inspections, just bullshit. And then since the Roman times, the snuffies have always thought that this is bullshit, why am I doing this? Just let me fight, what's this got to do with combat and all of that? And so, it's a fact that most military guys, and I'm talking ground combat, guys that are going to be in actual combat, even if they're seasoned combat vets, they're still, if they stay in for a career, the vast majority of their career is going to be in peacetime, in garrison. Well, and and from the Marine perspective, if you're in garrison, there are rules and regulations. There's supposed to be an attitude of excellence and being great at everything you do as a Marine, And I'm talking personal appearance, haircuts, physical fitness, inspections, and just a lot of policies and SOPs and little things that the troops refer to as, and we did too, as chicken shit, like what, how does this relate to combat? And I'll preface this with just, Jeff, and because, you're much more recent than me, 42-year career, private through gunnery sergeant, and then colonel, retired as a full colonel. Great reputation, a lot of Marine time, a lot of troop time, more so than most people. And I think that in any era, even ours, a lot of times it wasn't so much the officers, it was the staff NCOs and NCOs that told us to do something. It's like, what? Just shut up, because I told you. Because I'm the staff sergeant, and they didn't respond with any kind of, here's what the deal is and all that. Now, I did have a World War II Marine. He was World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I was talking to him one day, and I was like a lance corporal or a corporal, maybe, I don't know. And I asked him, why the haircuts and assistance? And he really related to me. I wish I remembered the whole speech, but he said, I'll show you pictures of me on Guadalcanal, no haircut, hadn't shaved. Our uniforms were rotting off of us, but our weapons were immaculate.
Clean, yeah, right.
And he said, when it comes right down to it, Chesty Puller, he was in Chesty Puller's regiment. He said Chesty Puller himself was not looking like a parade ground Marine there.
Sure.
And nobody cared about that. What we cared about was killing the Japanese and staying alive. So the discipline of peacetime, inspections, cleaning the barracks, field days, just regulations, personal appearance, humps. Back then, PT was humps, just going on force marches and stuff. Why? All of those things, he said, if Marines were used to complying with regulations and rules and inspection and discipline, then when you go to combat, that discipline doesn't go away. That's to make sure that you staying awake when you're on an LPOP.
Yes, yes.
That you've got the right frequencies on the radios, that you're a machine gunner, and you really are taking all of your ammo instead of leaving 3 ammo cans back because they're too heavy and all of that. He said it directly applies. And he said, as far as the haircuts go, if you look at a picture of me in World War II in Korea, we actually had longer hair back then. You know, it was fashionable. And he said, we started realizing that we had a lot of problems with head lice and things like that, or when guys had head wounds, a lot of hair gotten away, and then the hair's dirty, so now it's in the skull and the wound. And he said that's when the shorter haircuts came in. And he said early 60s is when kind of like the crew cut and high and tight came in. And he said what a lot of people don't know is that's also when the crew cut became very fashionable for civilian men.
Oh yeah.
So he said if you look at a high school or college yearbook in the late 50s through mid 60s, most of the guys have crew cuts, you know. He says so, it was less. Now, by the time me and you joined, by the time you and I joined, of course there were hippies, long hair. The average man the average guy our age had hair, and then one of the major reasons back then guys would not join the military, especially the Marine Corps, because they had to get their hair cut. And you've had the same experience, a Marine, we got the short hair, you walk into a bar, and at that point, Vietnam was, a lot of anti-Semitic Vietnam, and girls would look at us sometimes and just with disgust, and we had no chance with them because we were those military guys, And so I'm gonna get off. I got off on a tangent here, but
no, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
I want to hear. Do these things that we once thought were bullshit, and then we became NCOs, staff NCOs, and officers, and we became the guys imposing that bullshit chicken shit on the guys.
Right?
Do they have a purpose? Does it transfer to combat? Like, does being squared away in the rear actually make for a better combat soldier?
Right.
And then last, if you were giving a class right now, this class, and it said staff NCOs, officers, when the guy asks you, don't even wait for them to ask why they're doing it. Tell them the purpose behind this. So I'll let you talk now.
Yep, if you can, you do. Like when we went to boot camp, it was pretty much the way it's portrayed in the movie Full Metal Jacket.
Oh yeah,
almost exactly. And but and there was no argument. There was no explanation. You just did it. Your head was shaved. You stood at attention, and when you spoke in the third person. It was kind of hard to get used to. And if you didn't do it right, you got punished. And but we were in such a state of, I think, well, for me, I was only 17, so I was in a state of shock and terror. And actually doing that stuff right, that's the first thing I really did right, was learn how to express myself. And I kept getting like leadership jobs, like I was the guide, and then they'd fire me after a week and put somebody else in, then they'd rehire me. And it got to the point where I was getting punished all the time. And I remember drill instructors, right, like 2/3 of the way through boot camp, they go, okay, who do you bitches want to be the guide? And I'm like, oh no, please, no. And you hear, so the privates want Mrs. Kenney, because I was one of the nicknames for him. They're constantly degrading. I'm like, oh great. And so, but you know what? The one thing I noticed about that is that after a while, you learn priorities. The one thing they wanted us to come close to relaxing was the week we went to the rifle range. I don't know if you remember that, but because you can't be in a state of angst when you're trying to shoot. You're trying to do side alignment, side picture, and that.
Right.
And so I remember, and in that movie, Full Metal Jacket, the only time the drill instructor lets the guys laugh was when he says, "Who was Lee Harvey Oswald?" And then everybody knows that one. Who was, Charles Whitman? And only one or two guys know that. Sir, and then the black dude that they had said, "Sir, about Lee Harvey Oswald. Sir, he shot Kennedy, sir, from that book suppository building." And the drill instructor, Lee Ermey, lets them laugh. He goes, "All right, knock it off." But he lets them relax a little because they got to shoot. And so I started to realize, and then it got tightened up again after we all qualified in the range, or those of us who did. And I realized there was a method, there was a method to how they were doing stuff and there's a priority to it, the idea about haircuts and stuff. To this day, I mean, that is not only is it a matter of discipline, but that's the discipline that is your identity as a Marine. Not only is the discipline that you learn early in your first, years in the Marine Corps, but is it necessary? Because, what you hear, and then my experience in combat was, the more a unit appears to be disciplined in regards to police of an area, the way the Marines look, they all look the same. They're not wearing, like we're in Iraq and Afghanistan, Marines would want to sometimes customize them, put like kaffias almost on their necks. And sometimes you needed something to put over your face because all the dust and everything. But I have to tell you, a unit that appeared squared away was less likely to get attacked. A unit that looks trashy with trash all over the area and stuff like that, that's the type of thing you think, oh, you know what? We can attack these guys. It'll be safe. And so there's that. Then there's the identity you have as a Marine. When I was wounded, I was in the hospital and I came out of the coma, and they unintubated me and everything. And I saw a mirror of myself, and I said to my wife, "Holy shit. It's been about 10 days since I got hit." And I said, "I need a shave. I need a haircut. I look like a goddamn squid." And my mother said, "Jeffrey," because my mother's very strong, "that's not important." And my wife goes, "Oh, we need to get him a haircut. We need to get him shaved," And it was just, I didn't feel good till that happened. And to this day, now that I'm retired, every other week I still get my hair cut, and I still got a cut pretty much like yours is, It's like, it's not because I think everybody should do that. It just makes me feel good. It makes me feel like it's the right thing. Like, this is me, And after 40 some years, it is me. And the discipline stuff that, that the Marines have to do. And just like you said, you feel a lot of times it's like chicken shit and stuff like that, but you realize there's a priority to it. There was a push, if you remember this, when we first came in, to go kind of easy on things like marijuana and, and haircuts and stuff like that. And General Wilson, I brought him up multiple times yesterday. General Wilson and then General Barrow, his twin. No, we're going the other way. There's regs, and they exist for a reason. And you know what? You become proud of the fact. So the girls don't like you because you got your hair so short. Well, fuck them. You know what I mean? It's like, eventually, they'll, that if you believe in yourself, you'll be fine, and because this is your identity. You are a Marine, and this is one of the ways we set ourselves apart. Like you said, personal appearance, grooming, and stuff like that. Well, we referenced haircuts, so let me finish, my thinking on that. The haircuts thing starts out as something you're ordered to do. This is our standards. But after a while, it becomes part of your identity if you really believe in the Marine Corps. And there is this, and that is an important thing, your sense of identity. When we started fighting the Muslims, there is opinion that we had to have beards because they all had beards and stuff like that. I totally disagree with that. And I did, of the 5 tours I had in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, the 4 of them were as an advisor, where I was working closely with first the Iraqis and then the Afghans. And I was, I think, more successful than most guys, because I'll tell you, one of the things was I never tried to compromise my identity as an American, or for sure not as a U.S. Marine. There's no way I was going to wear a beard just because they did, you know, and they respect that. They respect, hey, look, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to be you. By the time I had that, my final combat tours in the Marine Corps, and like I said, the last 4, I was in advisor capacity, first with the Iraqis, then with the Afghans. And it was important that that I portray an honest rendition of the Marine Corps. I would never say things like some other advisors I heard say things like, well, Allah, may God praise his name. They would say Afghan phrases and stuff like that, or Iraqi phrases. And I could see the look on the Iraqis and Afghans' face, a look of, you got to recognize, you have to do the advisor thing for a while. It's a look of, yeah, I don't believe you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's like our guys would say, the Americans tried to foist things on the Afghan, especially the Afghans, that was just totally against their culture, like women cops, like women voting. It's like I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's necessary. We need to win this war, and we need to use these guys to do it. But there's powers above us that insisted on that type of thing. But I never, ever, pretended I was Muslim. No way. I didn't, because I didn't think I could carry it off. I never lied to these guys ever. That's the thing. Well, you lie to somebody who's a foreign force person, they'll never trust you, and trust is necessary. We were in combat with these guys, and I'll tell you, the luckiest thing that happens when you're an advisor is you get in combat with the people you're advising right away, because a lot of this crap that they try and foist on you, like, don't show the bottom of your feet, don't do this, don't do that, they're once you're in action with somebody, everything else falls away. There's no more bullshit. You showed that you're a cool head under fire and stuff like that. They really appreciate that. And it's not just with Afghans either. It's with your own men. Once you show that you can be trusted when things are at their worst, you're at your best, then it goes a long way to making you an effective officer, an effective leader if you're an NCO or staff NCO. And that's part of discipline, that there are certain ways you won't behave. And I have to tell you, it starts with sort of the private request permission to make an emergency standing head call. That's what it starts with, and because, I used to tell guys, I trained advisors in 2 different schools before I retired. And I tell them this, I'd say a couple things. I'd say, are the Iraqis or the Afghans, are they deceitful and murderous? Yeah, but that's no reason not to like them. And then I would say, yeah, I'd say, you have to, when in doubt, act like a Marine. Always act like a Marine. That's the biggest, and that is synonymous with discipline, self-discipline, and not just putting discipline on other people. But if you let people, and a lot of times there's a temptation to be the good guy with your troops, to be the good guy, and you can do that, but you got to still be that guy who has standards. And if you let somebody get away with something that seems like a small thing, he's going to leave you one of these days, or he's going to be in the PX later, and he's going to be walking. He's going to run into somebody who doesn't, he's going to suffer because of we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday. He's going to be punished, or he's going to run into adversity because you let him get away with stuff, and now he's in a place where they don't let him get away with it. You want to be a friend to your men, make sure they obey the rules, and you can do that without being unfriendly, without being not interested in their personal lives and helping them when you can, but It translates to not only how they're going to be perceived by other Marines, but it could keep them alive in different situations. Like every time we got back from a mission, every day in Iraq and Afghanistan, the first thing you do, you recharge, you clean those big, those crew serve weapons on the vehicles, you refuel the vehicle, and you're ready to go again at a moment's notice. Even though you're tired and you don't feel it, I'll just wait till tomorrow. No, you do it right now before you hit the rack. And then so the next day you're ready to go if something untoward or unexpected happens. And that's part of discipline, because you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to want to do it. The same thing that makes us get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and run and do pull-ups and stuff like that, because someday, you're going to need that strength. You're going to need that maintenance that you've been doing on yourself. And that's the type of discipline that, I think that made us hold on to Quezon, made us win Hue City, made us, be able to win in Guadalcanal and all those incredibly hard, campaigns that the Marine Corps is famous for. Start Bellawood all the way through to the guys in Fallujah in 2004, that type of stuff.
Good observation. I want to take a different tack, and this is an unscripted question, Jeff. So let's take it from us looking at the enemy. So here's Mike Etour's wild-ass non-Afghan, non-Iraq vet hypothesis. Mm-hmm. I would bet that the majority, over 50% of the bad guys that American forces were able to kill came about from situations in which the bad guy had a lapse of discipline. Light discipline, got caught in an open area, a danger area. You get my point. And so we're always attacking this from our standpoint. Mm-hmm. All else being equal, as a combat leader, I would much rather, if I had to take two hilltops per se, and the reconnaissance and intelligence came back and said, Hilltop A, these guys got their shit together. They've got obstacles. They're doing stand to in the morning and evening, that old British thing. But the other ones, man, they got cook fires going at night.
Trash
everywhere. Which one do you, and okay, Mike, your unit gets to pick which one you want to choose. I'm going after the undisciplined ones every single time. There's no guarantee it's going to be any easier than the disciplined ones, but if I'm presented with that opportunity, I'm going to take it. So I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'll ask your opinion. And I remember there was a Marine, a friend of mine, that was in Somalia before things turned badly. And there was an American outpost, and just down the street, there was like a UN compound. And further down, there was, a UN, like, let's just say the Senegalese or something. So 3 compounds.
Probably Pakistani or Italian or something.
He was all over his guys about force protection, watching this and that. And one of them said, sir, how strong do we gotta be? He said, we just gotta look stronger and more intimidating than those two. So they attacked them instead of us. And there's a lot of wisdom in that.
I believe that a lot. I really believe that.
So I shut up. Do you have any anecdotes, when you guys were able to tune up Iraqi and Afghan bad guys? Because I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they fucked up like this. Any thoughts?
Well, when I was in my first Afghan tour, we had 11-14s. It's a Humvee, up armored Humvee. That's what I had when I got blown up in Iraq. And I felt comfortable in that vehicle, believe it or not, because I was used to it. And then they started coming out with MRAPs. Now, I was in the eastern part, RC East, they call it, Regional Command East, which was very mountainous. And so they said, we want every advisor team to switch over from Humvees to MRAPs, which is a bigger, higher up vehicle, more resistant to IEDs and mines and things like that, And so we put them on low boys, and I said, no way. I told the CEO, the senior advisor team leader, which was then General Yu. I said, hey, sir, if we're going to do this, I'm not going to have them drive all the way back here to Jalalabad and then drive all the way back with these new vehicles they're not used to. I'll bring them the vehicles on low boys. He goes, all right. I go, I use it. It's a good way to train to, work with the Afghans too, So, and, we were doing everything right. And you want to get shot at in Afghanistan? Put MRAPs on low boys, because in places where we never got shot at, we were just getting hosed down. When you're kitted out in Afghanistan, I had a minimum of 7 30-round magazines and plus one in my M4, right? And I had a 9mm with 6 15-round magazines. I had hand grenade. I had all kind of stuff, right? That's just me. I didn't throw any hand grenades in that mission, but I was down to like 4 pistol rounds when I got done with that thing, because
Wow.
we went to 2 firm bases in what they call the Pesh Valley. And the Pesh Valley is up in the Kunar province, and it's a rough place. And at that time, the Army Airborne Battalion was up there, and our advisor teams were co-located with them, as were the Afghans co-located with them. And so, but man, we got hosed down. I remember our interpreters in Iraq carried weapons, but the ones in Afghanistan did not. And so I had this guy named Sarmad who was with me. He was like my second go-to interpreter. My first guy was on leave, Habibi. And so we're getting shot at and everything. And I remember we're getting shot from the high ground, which was common, to get shot from the high ground. And then if you call in artillery, they usually stop. And so, but they were, looks like they were trying to assault us. So we're like, I'm out of the vehicle. I said, Sarmad, you gotta go with me. We're going to go get Colonel Abzal, who was the Afghan brigade commander. He was with me on that mission. I said, we're see what he wants to do, because most of the guys were the Afghans. And so we said, we got to go down to the low ground and engage these guys at close range. And before I went, I had females in that outfit, female Air Force. And I was going to take all the dudes with me into the low ground. And listen, all you leave is a gunner on the gun, and the driver, and at this point, a female Air Force lieutenant. And she was an outstanding lieutenant, but I couldn't leave them alone with the Afghans, because the Afghans would try and rape them, and that's no exaggeration.
Yeah.
It's an ugly thing, but that's no exaggeration. So I said to her, hey, look, Amanda, I'm going to bring you to my Humvee. And in my Humvee, on the right-hand side, I had written the Kilo Echoes on the windshield. And Kilo Echo is like, Alpha Bravo 1001. In the Arty unit their thing was Kilo Echo. The Kilo Echoes were the target numbers. I said, so these are what's relevant. And I kind of like made a grease pencil thing on the windshield. I go, I'm going to call you, tell you which ones. I'm going to adjust from them. You just repeat it to the Arty battery. It'll be okay. She goes, yes, sir. And she's dead calm. And the whole time, her tears are coming down her face. She was so scared that she wasn't going to be able to do good. And her whole front of her battle dress was soaked with tears. And but if you heard her on the radio, you'd never know that, So off I go, and we engage these guys. and we whack a couple of them, and I said to Colonel Avzal, they were shooting us from this like mountain almost right across the way, and I said to him, "Sir, you want to assault those guys up there?" And he says to me, and thank God he goes, "I think they're too far away for us to capture them." I mean, that's the way it came out, I go, "Yeah, I agree." So we just suppressed and went back. We got into 2 more scraps before we got to where we delivered those things. But she called in Artie, and I wrote her up for a BV. And it ended up just being a regular Bronze Star that they gave her, But to be honest, I had to do it. I mean, she did fine, I had a couple Marines down there, and they're out throwing hand grenades. Those guys, they rated too. I had good people, but that was, and you've heard the old. I guess I may be getting off topic a little bit here, but it is about discipline. But discipline is also attached to you use your men in accordance with their capabilities, and so I had females. I had 2 lieutenants. I found good use for them. They had talents, not because they're women, because they're just individuals that my guys didn't have. And here's another, for instance, and this is about the culture of things. The colonel was a Nuristani, and they're from the northwestern or northeastern part of Afghanistan, and Mike, they look like Germans. They look like Ernest, like the guy I was advising, Colonel Avzal. He looked like I was lieutenant colonel. He looked like Ernest Hemingway, big beard and stuff, and I don't know how that happened. They think they're descended from Alexander's guys, the Macedonians, but no one knows for sure. But anyway, he had one wife and he had 12 kids, and she had 12 kids by the time she was 40. And the conversations, I talked to that guy like 3 hours every morning with my interpreter Habibi, which ironically means dear one in Arabic. He had an Arabic name, but he was a Pashtun, right? Yeah. And so we're talking, all of a sudden the conversation, they start talking about the patient. So I'm like, who the fuck are they talking about? And then it dawned on me, he's talking about his wife. They'll never say, meet my wife, or this is they never. That's just not done, And she was going through her change. And she was acting crazy. And he thought he was going to have to kill her. It was getting to be that bad. But he desperately didn't want to. He's a decent guy. And so I go to our brigade commander who owned the battle space is now the chief of staff of the U.S. Army, Randy George. And I said, "Sir, I got this situation. I need a shrink. I think she's just going through a change. And whatever happens with broads," and I didn't know anything about her. Right? And so these 2 females, I had to get a female translator, and they found me a female translator from the PRT. It's like a half military, half State Department thing that was nearby there. And they got me a Kuchi female interpreter. Now the Kuchis are like a nomads that go all the way through that part of Eastern Asia, right? And they're like caravans. Right? They made a movie called Caravans based on a book by James Michener about the Kuchis. So you got this woman, she looked like an Apache woman. They don't wear burqas and stuff, and we took the conference room, we squared it off with 550 cord with poncho liners hanging down so you couldn't see. And I got this dude who was a major doctor, shrink from Kabul, and he's talking to like Lieutenant Reed, and I had another female, Lieutenant Malcolm. They're coordinating the whole thing. Females talking to each other through these little barriers, but they were talking right to Colonel Avzal's wife with this Kuchi interpreter, and he asked a few questions. It goes around the horn, and eventually he realized what she needed. He gave her some prescription meds, and she was fine. And this guy Avzal thought I was the cat's ass after that. All I knew is I didn't know what to do. but these broads did, or these females did, and so I did that. Never in my life would I ever think something like that would happen, and but it did there, and you know, it was it's an eye opener. Now, as related to the subject of discipline, these were Air Force females. I had a couple of Marines. It was an all services team. My brigade team was. The Kandak or battalion teams were all Marines, right? Like the team that Dakota Meyer, he was like from on the opposite side of the river from that one that we had to go bring the MRAPs to. It was easier to get to Meyer's place than it was the other one. We didn't get shot at dropping those off. But, and Meyer was up in this place called Asmar. And actually, he was home by the time we delivered those MRAPs. But it was a twist. It was a very unusual mission that got even more unusual, with the factors of that in there, And I have to tell you, I wasn't wearing a beard. I didn't praise Allah or anything like that, but I did for that guy, a solid, and it really helped us throughout the rest of the time.
Yeah, there's great lessons in there. There's great lessons in there from a strategic and interacting with the local perspective. Right. And that act of kindness that you afforded that colonel and his wife had to breed a lot of respect and loyalty from him to you and your forces, and things went better because of that. As far as discipline goes, because we're going to talk about fear and uncertainty next, that's a good segue. I mean, you got that female Air Force lieutenant, obviously not trained to be a combatant, and she finds herself there. Don't know if she volunteered for it or not, but she's there. And all of a sudden you're telling her to call in artillery, and she's crying. I believe it at a point where her uniform is soaked, but she had enough self-discipline and resolve and resilience to stand fast, not crater, and do the mission. Right. And that can serve as an example to any man, any fighter, because there are going to be times, we're going to talk about it now, where I don't care who you are, if you get in the wrong situation, the pucker factor is high, and I don't know of a person that doesn't feel at some point some level of fear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's minor or it elevates into abject terror, like, we're not going to make it. We're going to die right now, So let's move into that, Jeff. Okay. I think the question that every combatant asks pre-combat, the people that are watching this now, years from now, even serving in uniform now that haven't faced the test, of combat, it's like, hey, when the first rounds snap by my face, I'm going to be afraid. Everybody tells me we're going to be afraid. All these old salts are saying, oh, you're going to be afraid, but you're going to control it. Am I really going to be able to overcome it and do my job and not let my guys down? So based upon your personal experience, what advice do you have for any warrior, much less a leader, who have yet to face combat relative to the inevitable fear and how they can control it? And if there's anything they can do before that to enhance their ability to deal with it, set it aside and motor on.
I would say the best way to deal with that is training. And if you have influence, like when I was a company commander, I was the guy. I decided what my company's going to do for training. And so, I was a believer, and this is based on talking to guys who had been through a lot of combat. Talking to you, when we were at the basic school about Grenada and Beirut and, Desert Storm and all that stuff. And talking, like I said, that gunnery sergeant, Gunny Stepp, who was he had a lot of combat and stuff, and he said the training is what gets you through that. And then he was absolutely right. We had that gunfight in Liberia, and these guys are shooting at us. But when we shot at them, Mike, well, I had like these positions. Here's an M60. We're the last battalion to have M60s too. Everybody else already had 240 Gold. When you have a reinforced position of Marines putting out rounds, it's like the death rate 2000, and it's like that gives you confidence and it alleviates your fear because you can see the devastation that you're putting on the enemy. And even though when those rounds crack over your head, it sounds like an explosion over your head. 7.62 goes over within 3 feet of your head. You feel, it's a cracking. It's not like a, it's a no shit little explosion when it goes over. And that, and the fact we had done so much live fire and movement, stuff like that, it really, none of my guys seemed like it really affected them, too much. But I know it was, because I know that night nobody slept because we were all so keyed up. None of us had ever been in a gunfight before, except for Frank, Frank Spivey. He's the only guy that had combat. Yeah. Actually, my first sergeant, Rosenfeld, he was with Furness. And when they went into Panama during remember that Arahan tank farm thing we did in the 87 or something like that, or 88? He was there in a foxhole when he was a staff sergeant or a gunny with Dave Furness. They were 3-4. And, but other than that, those two guys, no one else had been in combat, including me, And so, but it was an eye-opener to me that how well the men performed, how well the Marines performed, and it was a function of the training. And I have to tell you, I kind of hit on it yesterday. A lot of the reason we did that training, and I trained myself right along with them, was because there was a kind of a philosophy when we were in the basic school. I know you would shit on these guys for doing it, but they'd say, I'm going to be a great company commander because I've watched 1,000 patrols and I've seen 600 attacks. I'm thinking, by that logic, Larry Merchant should be the heavyweight champion of the world because, but he ain't. He's a pussy, man, because it's one thing to pick scabs off somebody who's doing it. It's another thing to be the guy who's actually doing it, who's making the decisions,
Well, to that effect, and for the non-Marines out there, even the non-Marine officers, and even the guys that have never been stationed at TBS, everybody at TBS, it's funny, the Marine Corps sends its top 10% to like 8 duty stations. 8th and I, top 10%. The recruit depot, series officer, top 10%. Basic school, top 10%. Well, we're already at 80% of the lieutenants and captains. So it can't. Like bullshit. But generally true. It was true at the basic school. We got the most of the staff there when I was a student, and then on the staff were really probably the number one lieutenant or captain in their battalion or unit. Right. Prior to coming there. So you got a group of studs there. And I, as, a type A lead sled dog, I loved being in the presence of other alpha males. Sure. Not everybody did. Everybody was so used to, some people were so used to being the guy, the golden child, that when they looked to the left and right, they wouldn't admit it publicly. It's like, man, I'm surrounded by guys. I think some of these guys might even be better than me. And the good ones rise to the occasion and say, this is great. I'm getting better. I love it.
Absolutely right.
There are a small bunch, though, that shrink from it. And where I'm going with this.
You're right, though. You're right.
is even the good ones can get lulled into a sense of elitism. Like I'm here, my rest of my buddies, they're at the depot, they're on recruiting.
Right.
And I'm at the basic school. I'm tactically involved. I'm teaching patrol. I'm teaching squad in the attack, blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting ready. I'm going to go out there and gas. I'm going to go to AWS and go down. I'm going to go. The Second Marine Division is going to say, "My God, what have we done without you? You know, thank God you're here." And you know where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah.
In every group of guys that leave the basic school and now go to school and end up in charge of rifle companies or weapons companies, there's a slice of them that fail miserably.
Yeah.
And there are those that fail and don't get relieved, and then there are those that fail so badly they get shit canned.
Yeah. There's a guy, I don't remember his name, but if I did, I wouldn't say it. But he was like a burly dude. When I first got to the basic school as an instructor, I was in an EI company. And he was yelling at me one time. There was this attack going on where I was kind of like helping with the, remember these lieutenants who have a war with them? They divide the company in half, and they put a TBS instructor from tactics in charge of one half, and then B would be another tactics instructor. They kind of like go at each other. And anyway, this guy, he's kind of a blowhard, big mouth and shit like that, and but he was like known as a guy who was assertive in that tactics part of the basic school. He wasn't an IOC guy or anything. And I remember thinking, man, I really hate this guy. You know what I mean? I would, I thought, I bet you I could, in a fist fight, I could beat him. But I mean, it's like, everybody would think I was a first lieutenant still then. I was waiting to get picked. I mean, I had just been there like a month or two, And then he rotated. He got fired his first week as a company commander for looking like a bag of ass or pissing off his battalion commander or something like that.
Wow. Well, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. So all good stuff. And as the audience can see, we frequently drift into sea stories because, let's face it, Jeff,
I apologize.
We have some unique experiences, and the Marine Corps really is blessed to have us still. So I'm joking, obviously, but back to fear and uncertainty.
Yes.
You've already alluded to it. Let's get back to it. So, they're listening like, yeah, okay, you say I can overcome it. Let's talk a little bit more about training. What specifically, do you have any specific examples? Okay, Jeff, I'm by it. I can do training. What kind of training? For me,
live fire.
And for my unit. Okay.
Live fire. That's where you're going. And the thing you're worried about when you go into combat is your performance under fire. So you must do as much live fire, especially live fire and movement, with as many of your indigenous weapons to a Marine Rifle Battalion as you can work into it, if you have influence on that. And you want to do that so that, number one, it gives your men and your subordinate leaders confidence. And number two, it's training you. It's training you. And the closest thing that you can get to that fear of mortality is our own live fire and movement and live fire and maneuver type stuff. The more you do that, and you're always going to be nervous, you got to treat every one of those live fires like it's the first and last one you're ever going to do. So you don't take anything for granted. Nothing. Not the ORM, not what you're going to do if somebody gets hurt, nothing. And but the biggest fear you have is fear that one of your guys is going to get hurt because of a mistake you made.
Right.
Hurt or killed. And that's the biggest gut scratcher there is. And I mean that, especially when you can't see them all the time. You're not with them. You had to disperse your guys. That's the biggest angst you have because, the idea that someone's going to get killed doing something I ordered them to do and I wasn't going to be there, it's just something I have a hard time living with. And thank God, like I said yesterday, it didn't happen. I was the first guy to get seriously wounded enough to be evacuated. and in Iraq. But then they started showing up in Bethesda, guys, from or worse at Arlington, or just dead, and so there was that's the biggest thing, will I make a mistake that gets some guy who's just doing what I told him to do killed? And you know what? Even if you don't make a mistake, guys are going to get hurt bad. And later on, there was times when we had guys wounded real bad or killed. Like the thing with Dakota Meyer, that incident, I was there right as that thing ended. I was in that Pesh Valley place I told you we delivered those Humvees through. Oh, this is way before that. And Colonel George, then Colonel, now General George, he landed and picked me up. Or no, he picked us up back in Jalalabad, me and Colonel Abzal, and we flew in there. There wasn't even enough room in that Black Hawk for me to take my interpreter. So I figured, well, I'll use some of the interpreters there in that team there at Fob Joyce was the name of it. But one of them was wounded and the other one was dead. So I really couldn't communicate too much with the Afghans. But by that time, I had been working with Colonel Avzal enough, and he was a fanatic about trying to learn English, that, we could make each other understood. But because those guys, like, for instance, Meyer's interpreters, I told you this yesterday, one of them got killed, and the other one was just shattered. I ended up keeping that guy with me. And he turned out okay. I wish I could show you the pictures I got from that, but that was rough. But when someone's dying, who's hurt real bad and they're dying, your instinct is going to be, and I'm not talking just Marines. I'm not talking about just Americans, no matter who, as long as he's not a Taliban guy, right? He's dying and you know it and he knows it. Your first instinct is to kind of leave him alone. But don't. You should get close to the guy if you're the only one there. And so he's got some human contact as he's passing away. It's hard to explain, but it's something you should do, especially if it's a Marine, Yeah,
I get you. And I want to, add to this, I don't know if this is in the fear and uncertainty bucket, Jeff, but I grew up, as did you, with the World War II, Korea and Vietnam guys. Yeah. And these guys, many of them had seen like no shit, real fighting, real casualties,
horrible, yeah.
and all of that, Iwo Jima,
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a second lieutenant going through the basic school, we had the combat panel.
Oh, yeah.
And my combat panel, I remember we had a lieutenant colonel named Mastrion there.
Oh, yeah.
Bill
I remember
Mastrion.
He retired right around there, too.
Yeah, he retired, I think, in Fredericksburg.
He had a shitload of combat experience. Remember?
Yes, he had, I think, the most time in the field as a infantry company commander. I think it was like 54 months or something over 3 tours.
Man.
And he had a couple of silver stars, and he was in charge of what we knew as the IG. I don't know if they called it back then there, the instructor group, but he would come down and he would talk to us, give us classes, and this guy was really good. And I never forget, he always said 2 things. Don't kill nobody that doesn't need killing. And then in the spirit of aggressiveness, he said, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. And in combat, that is absolutely true. The meek shall inherit the earth, 6 feet of it. In other words,
get the dirt.
Ain't no room for a meek combat leader. You got to go. Mm-hmm. But on that panel was Mastrion, Larry Livingston.
Oh, yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Legendary combat leader. Mm-hmm. Wayne Rawlings.
Another one.
So we got.
And they were subsequent battalion commanders in 3-4 to each other. I can't remember which one was first.
Yeah. And so I remember Wayne Rawlings, he said.
I got like 3 things to say, but he only had like 2 whole fingers on one hand.
Well,
Remember
yeah,
that?
yeah. And that happened in a farm accident, you know. They
Oh,
call
shit.
him,
I didn't know.
yeah. No, everybody thinks it was wounded because, you know, Navy Cross, Silver Star, he's got everything except
yeah.
the big one. And, you know, a really unique individual, recon guy, Guinness World Book of Records. He did like 53,000 sit-ups, you know, and all. Then some Russian beat him, some Soviet. And he said, oh, no, went back into training and beat the Russian again. He was in the Guinness World Book of Records. I don't know if he's still there in the record. But anyway, regarding casualties, somebody asked him about that, and he said, look, if nobody, he said what you said, your biggest fear is I'm not going to make a mistake that's going to get people killed. And the reality is you probably will. You're probably going to say, take your squad, go around the right side, go around the left, and you realize, holy shit, that didn't work. And he said, it's there's no guarantees, but it's probably going to happen. And at that point in time, you just can't crater.
Right. You got to go on.
You got to go on. And he said also, forget it, just regular, if you fight a determined enemy worth of shit, people are going to get killed and wounded.
Yeah.
And as the commander, a lot of your Marines are going to be seeing dead bodies for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, it ain't pretty. And he said, how many of you guys have ever gutted a deer? And a bunch raised. He goes, he had that chewing tobacco in his mouth. He's a real country hick. And his comment was, damn, I'm surprised. He was shocked at how many people had never hunted, you know, because he was, I think it was an Alabama guy. So anyway, he said, well, the human body, it's not like the movies. You get shot and fall down. He said it gets torn up, and the inside is all sorts of full of colors and stuff, just like the guts of a deer. Oh, yeah. And he said, your Marines are going to stand there and be shot. They'll stop mid-stride, he said. And you and the NCO's got to kick them in the ass, literally, if necessary, and get them moving, because if you don't, there's going to be a ton more casualties.
Yeah. You
know, there's time to grieve and cry and all that later on, not during the attack. Go. Let the corpsmen have them. Go. Maintain the assault. Keep going, or it's not going to end pretty for you. And to show you the purpose of this podcast and continuity, I was on the combat panel when I was in TBS.
Oh, yeah, I've been on some of them,
And I remember saying when I was up there was me and Dennis Green and a couple of others, and I remember saying, folks, lieutenants, I know you're impressed, but I got to tell you, I said, when I went through, here's who was on the combat panel. And speaking for myself, this is the best we got for you right here. You know what I mean?
I know, man.
I'm a poor substitute,
It's like, listen to this. So we had the live fire, weapons platoon live fire we would do for the lieutenants at IOC. And it was a 2-day thing. And you had 2 billets in weapons platoon, right? Mortars 1 day, the next day your machine guns, something like that. So we had, and then that night we'd have a fireside thing. We'd bring out a combat speaker. And I remember when I was a director, the first combat speaker we had was Lou Dabney, who was the CEO of a rifle company in 326. I think it was a Mike company, maybe India company, on Hill A81. And he gave a great talk. Now listen to this, Mike. I had my 2 sons who joined the Marine Corps there. They weren't in the Marine Corps yet. I brought them with me. And Dabney did a great job. You know what I mean? He's the son-in-law of Chesty Puller, incidentally.
Yeah, yeah.
And his son, we went to the basic school together. And his son looked just like him, only thing younger, But he was great, and because I remember one lieutenant saying, sir, this is an air wing guy, pilot going through the IOC, right? Sir, what would you say is the best platform for close air support? And Dabney says, a B-52. Which, for folks who don't know, that's the biggest bomber we had then, It drops like They do these things called arc lights of these things where every 100 yards there's a 500-pound bomb. It's just devastating. And that's what they were using to defend Khe Sanh, Operation Niagara, and but he gave a great talk about exactly that. And a kid getting wounded, or they went this dawn and they had a external load from a 46 of ammo and stuff like that. It gets hit by mortars. The external load breaks and it goes rolling down the hill. So he organized patrol real quick. It's still real misty out. Sends these guys down. They start coming back up. They get hit by mortars. He's got a couple badly wounded guys. He calls it, and this is when the 46 is only a couple years old, 1968, right? He calls in for a medevac. They come in. They get a couple loads out. They got 146 on their tiny little LZ, and no shit, 82 millimeter mortar hits it right dead center. Now they got 8 more casualties. So he calls in another bird. It gets shot away. I mean, shot away where it gets hit so bad it has to go back to Khe Sanh, trail and smoke, and he finally gets those guys out. He gets him out, this 46 guy. He said this guy had nerves of steel, a pilot. He lands, they they couldn't even land the LZ. They landed on the spur of like a hill. And one by one, they basically like firemen's, relay, get these guys on the thing. It takes off and it's on fire. It's smoke coming out of it as it goes down towards the combat base of Khe Sanh. And he goes, and everybody's high-fiving. He goes, well, thank God we got everybody out. And then they had like a half of an arty battery up there, and they were really well fortified. And Hill A81 north or south or whatever. And he gets this call on the field phone. It's a doc in 3rd Platoon. He says, sir, we got another one. Guy hit bad. If we don't get him out, he's going to die. And he goes, so what do you do, man? We already lost 3 helicopters that day trying to get people out. What do you do? He never tells the lieutenants. He never told them, which is great. And because, what do you do? Well, what he did was he didn't call it in. He said, this guy's hurt too bad. So the kid died there, and because he just couldn't bear, so try to save one guy, you lose like a crew, that's pilot, co-pilot, and 2 crew chiefs at least. Not to mention the guys who are putting, and that's the kind of shooting barrel they're in. And both my kids, one of them went to 1-6, and he was in a side cons battalion, and the other one went to 2-4, where he was 81's kid, But it's and so Dabney must be the agony of that, you know what I mean? Of having to make that decision.
Well, as you know, Dabney was highly regarded.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point, after Khe Sanh was over, or maybe even during the later stages of it, the Marines were getting pasted there. I mean, they were in a fishbowl, that's surrounded by divisions of, NVA, and getting pounded with, thousands of HE rounds a day. That's the gold standard there, And at one point, the Hilo squadron that was supporting him made him the honorary squadron commander because there were more of their helicopters at Khe Sanh shot down than were still flying. So he actually owned more of the helicopters. So they made him the honorary squadron commander. And I heard him talk too. He made a point of going back and meeting all those pilots and all of the artillery guys in the rear and all that, thanking and supporting us. So that's a lesson right there. I think this I think it was not even late in his career. He retired as a colonel. I couldn't believe he didn't become a general officer.
Right. CO 9th Marines.
But the bottom line is, later on, after he retired, they actually upgraded his Silver Star to a Navy Cross.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah, they did. And going back, so great guy. For those listening, I think his name is William Dabney, Colonel Dabney. Look him up. There's all sorts of material out there for him. If he was alive, he could do this podcast by himself for
Heck yeah.
100 episodes.
Yeah, he became the CO of 1-1 when they reactivated 1-1 in like 76. So there's a guy on MSU with me who had been in 1-1, and he goes, I had Chesty Puller's son-in-law was my battalion commander, and then he made 9th Marines, and he said the only reason, except for being a company commander, the only reason he was a battalion commander and a regimental commander is because other guys who got relieved out of both those jobs,
Yeah.
I remember him saying that.
So I want to go back to the anecdote I told about Wayne Rawlings, Jeff, because there's a lesson in here that I want to impart. Mm-hmm. So when I was on the combat panel, as a very poor substitute from what I had as a lieutenant,
right,
I passed on Wayne Rawlings's advice about casualties and looking like a deer. I said, this isn't me. This is Wayne Rawlings. How many of you know? Some knew. I described Wayne Rawlings, and of course they're like, whoa, yeah, what a stud. Mm-hmm. And by then I think he might have been a general. I'm not sure. He was at least a colonel then. Probably a colonel. But anyway,
he retired as a 1-star.
2-star. He retired.
He
got 2-star. Yeah. And should have gone for more. Him and Livingston and Ray Smith. Don't even get me started on that.
No shit.
But
those three guys.
I passed that lesson on about, here's what I learned, and it really helped me the first time I did see casualties. And some of those casualties in Beirut were not Marines, they were civilians, and I mean completely torn up by mortars or artillery, and it helped me. Fast forward, I get contacted on LinkedIn. I have a big following on LinkedIn, and I'd say once a month, somebody contacts me. I'm a colonel. I'm retiring. You don't know me, but I was a student when you were at TBS.
Oh, wow.
One guy contacted me about 2 years ago, and he said, you don't know me. I'm Colonel Smuckatelli. I was a student when you through, and he was a MARSOC guy,
Okay.
And he had done really well. I looked him up. He had done really well. And he said, that story you told about the deer and casualties, I just want to let you know, I have passed that story on for 30 years, and it made a difference in my guys in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and now some of my guys are passing that story. So the lesson is, what we're doing with this podcast is to reflect the wisdom of the ages, so to speak, that is out there. But especially for the young guys, seek knowledge and insights everywhere. And when you pick up a good tidbit like this, the Dabney, the Wayne Rawlings anecdote, put it in your hard drive and propagate it. Spread that DNA throughout. And I know you agree. I know you absolutely agree.
Oh, absolutely.
With that. Yes.
The stuff we heard, like we talked about yesterday, when Colonel Ripley came and talked to lieutenants. We didn't hear him talk to lieutenants, but me and you happened to be over there at IOC, me, you, and Mellinger. We got our own private little, him talking about the guys in the Getland patrol where Bobo got the Medal of Honor and everything. And they had to police that battlefield up, his company, India 3-3 or whatever it was,
Yeah. Well, it's all good. Well, listen, Jeff, we're running close to about 90 minutes right now. And so this is a great place to end for part 2. Okay. And we'll pick it up. The next part, we'll start with one of your favorites, mental toughness.
Okay.
And the warrior spirit, and that's followed by physical conditioning. And these two definitely lie within your area of expertise, my friend. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share with the groups.
And I remember, that's a key component to the whole thing. It has so much to do with your self-confidence and the way that gets almost like, how, and I'm not saying our guys are like dogs, but you have dogs, they can tell when you're nervous, they can tell when you're upset.
Yeah.
Well, well, so can your men, you know?
Oh,
So
yeah.
The poise is so important, you know?
Yeah.
And, that's a function of it for sure.
There's no doubt about it. So I'm actually looking forward to hearing what you got to say with that. But for now, my friend, thank you so much for this great episode, part 2 of the Jeff Kenney series, which I predict is going to be very, very well viewed and traveled throughout the time here. And it's going to, obviously, we're old farts now, so we don't know how many days we got left, but these episodes are going to be out there. And something you have said so far in these episodes and what you're about to say in the future episodes, some corporal or lieutenant or lance corporal or whatever is going to remember one of these tidbits in a dark, dangerous place 10, 30, 100 years from now, and it's going to save lives. It's going to save lives. So I mean, 42 years of active duty, most of that really in the trenches, a lot of combat experience. I can't let you pass from this earth without sucking it all out of you. You know what I mean? So,
thank you so much.
Not that I think you're about to go. You know what I mean? You know?
Oh yeah, it could. I mean, I'm pretty healthy right now, but you know, who knows?
Why is not today your birthday?
It is. I'm 68 today. God damn it.
68. Well, I told you last episode. You look. You look great for a guy that's 79 years old.
Well, it's because I behave like a child. I'm very child. You know that. You remember me.
We're both that way. You know. Remember we came to the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Remember you telling me, Jeff. We're retired. I was getting ready to retire, and I think this is even a couple of years before. No, I was in the hospital. I got out of the hospital. In the same conversation, you accused me of purposely getting wounded so I'd have a medal that you didn't have, i.e. the Purple Heart. You said, stay alive as long as you can. Make these bastards pay that pension for 100 years if necessary.
Well, I'll close out on this. My last duty station, I was at Quantico, and you know how they used to have the message traffic every day and those aluminum binders, and you go in there and read all the messages that were important for the Marine Corps, high level stuff. And every time a general officer dies, there would be a message, and you had to lower the flag, a half mast on the base. And I read this guy, and Jeff, this guy was a Naval Academy graduate, like 1918 or something, 50. So this guy did World War I and the Banana Wars, and I think he got recalled for World War II as a BG. And he was too old to fight. They put him in charge of a base or something while everybody else went to fight. So he retired as a brigadier general, and here's the money shot right here. He drew a brigadier's pension for 50 years.
Wow.
50. And I read that, and I was about to retire within a couple weeks, and I'm like, that's my new role model. I want to draw this pension so long that Headquarters Marine Corps audits me and said, there's no way this guy's still alive.
Yeah,
there's no way.
130-year-old Social Security guy.
Exactly. You'll get Elon Musk and Doge looking at me and all that. So anyway, my friend, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's I knew this would be. The bottom line is we have these conversations all the time, and these we've managed to actually do it without too many F-bombs and all that, which is commendable for us, So anyway, my friend, thank you so much, and for the audience out there, I hope you enjoy this. Please share this so more people can join our tribe here, and we are rounds complete for part 2 of the Jeff Kenney series. And as always, leaders, have a great day and go forth and lead well.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.